Welcome back to the Daily Drum on WHUR and Sirius XM Channel 141. This is the Insight segment. I'm Harold Fisher. It's been about a week since the parents of 19-year-old Dakara Thompson were told by authorities that their daughter was the victim of a homicide in Prince George's County. And while this case slowly winds its way through the criminal justice system, the grieving issue is right here. It is right now and will likely continue for many, many years to come. Well, tonight, we're going to take a look at grief, what grief is like for parents who have lost a child unexpectedly. It is a very important and a particularly sensitive issue. And my guests tonight are the best people to talk about this. My guests are Dr. Catherine Marshall Woods. She's a clinical psychologist specializing in grief therapy. Linda Diaz, mother of Loren Santiago. She lost her 15-year-old daughter to suicide in 2015. She's also the founder of Loren's Law in the state of Maryland. And also Sheila Malloy. She lost her son, Cortez Malloy, when he was 41 years old. He died from complications of diabetes. Ladies, thank you so much for sharing and spending some time to talk about this really important issue.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, sure thing.
Yeah, thank you.
Let me first start with you, Catherine, because you've been on this program for many, many years talking about this, and unfortunately, things have not changed. Grief is a very, very difficult and emotionally debilitating thing for people to deal with. But characterize what it's like for parents who have lost their children, particularly very young children, as in the case of Dakara Thompson.
Yes, grief takes on a life of itself. It can, certainly, and can actually take the life of other individuals, to be frank. It is something that is overwhelming to be able to cope with for many individuals, and grief is made much more predictable or expected when there is more of a terminal illness and one is anticipating the loss. It doesn't make it easier emotionally, but there is an anticipation, and individuals are prepping and priming themselves emotionally for those losses. However, when someone dies by suicide or homicide or unexpectedly, that is a very different experience of grief. The hope that individuals had of being able to watch this person grow old, and you're not just saying goodbye to that person, you're saying goodbye to the hopes and dreams of who that person would have become. And so that is, you're saying goodbye to many things. You're saying goodbye to, potentially, if it's your child, you're saying goodbye to grandchildren that you would have known from that person. You're saying goodbye to who they would have become in the world professionally, and for other individuals that they would have touched. You're not just grieving, again, that person, you're also grieving a lot of the hopes and dreams that you had for that person. And that makes it a very different experience.
Can you, if you don't mind, briefly, Linda, share with us what the loss of your daughter was like in the immediate aftermath?
The loss, when I lost Loren, I wasn't allowed to really grieve, because when I lost Loren was a freshman in high school, and she had just turned 15, so she had friends as young as 13 and a little bit older, as old as 17 and 18. And because the children didn't know how to grieve, and the parents didn't know how to support their kids, and the teachers weren't properly prepared, and the school counselors were not properly prepared, a lot of these kids started to suffer. And when they started to suffer and they could not find the help or the resources to cope, they immediately sort of started swarming into my home. They had my phone number from Loren. They would call me, they would text me at all times of the night. So instead of being able to truly, one, grasp how I lost my daughter and what I missed, I had to walk with helping other kids not to join my daughter, which is the common ripple effect of suicide. And as the doctor mentioned, sometimes it causes an issue where people don't know how to grieve properly, and gone with no assistance, they tend to to check out and not want to deal with their pain. And the only way to deal with their pain is by leaving, by suicide. And I wanted to prevent that. So I've spent the last 12 years that Loren has been gone, doing a lot of advocacy to change legislation, to bring more awareness to younger children that are victims of, traumatic events in their lives, divorce, bullying and things like that. I pretty much was grieving, but at the same time trying to save other children or save the fate of other children so that other families didn't have to go through what I go through every day.
Let me follow up with something that I was particularly struck by, because you said you immediately went into what I would describe as a mothering mode for the children who were suffering. But my question, and particularly as it relates to focusing on today's topic, what did you do for yourself in the immediate aftermath of the death of your daughter?
For myself, I really needed to learn what self-care was. I needed to be able to understand, first off, because suicide was unexpected. I needed to understand, what I missed, but I needed to cry. I needed those times. I needed to be able to cry. I needed to be able to, remember Loren and talk about Loren. I needed to feel close to her in certain ways. So, but losing a child at such a young age, you don't immediately know how to do self-care. So I had to remember the most basic things. I needed to remember to eat. I needed to remember to have fluids in my body so that I didn't dehydrate. I needed to make sure that I tried to get as much sleep as I could. Everything goes out the window. You forget everything. You forget work. You forget how to take care of yourself. And, like the parents of and family of Dakara, I can only imagine what they're going through, because not only are they trying to grieve, and they're probably doing the exact same things that I did when I lost Loren, but it's also in the media. And it's something that, while it is important to get justice for Dakara and what happened, it is also a reminder, the pain. It's like ripping a Band-Aid off, off all the time. And
Let me, if I may, I want to ask Sheila, the same question. Your son, Cortez, was not a child. He was an adult. He was 41. And he had obviously health challenges, but you've said that you were not prepared for his sudden passing.
No.
in the immediate aftermath of his death, what was grief like for you?
Although was not a homicide or in the news, it was
Mhm.
just as traumatic for me. And I would say that that would be for any parent, because no parent thinks about burying their child. We are so busy planning for our children to bury us. I didn't even know what to do when Cortez passed. I watched the paramedics try to save my child's life. Um, it was heartbreaking. My heart is still broken, but it is my faith and my self-worth that has gotten me off the floor, because I was on the floor when my child died. Cortez was my firstborn. You could almost say that we grew up together. I was 18 when I had him. He was my best friend. He was a loving gentleman, and I loved it about my son. And we talked pretty much every day. Cortez died on a Sunday. I talked to him last on a Friday. I beat myself up for not talking to my child on Saturday. But because of my background in being a domestic violence survivor, and having my nonprofit for domestic violence, I had learned some self-care things through counseling, which I still do. I had to add grief now to that baggage of trauma. But at that moment when Cortez died, all of that I learned was gone. I had to sit on the floor and decide if I wanted to keep going. I had to think about, I do have a daughter who's an adult. I do have grandchildren. And I know that Cortez would have wanted me to get off the floor and live. But I had to crawl my way to an upright position and get my mind right so I can go prepare to bury my son.
Yeah. Catherine, we have spoken so many times about, the stages of grief, and certainly the clinical part is important. But for, I'm sure, the Thompson family, and if you were to have spoken to Linda at the time of the loss of her daughter, or, Sheila at the time of the loss of her son, I'm sure you would have heard something like, I don't want to hear that. I'm not, interested in your psychobabble. I have lost my child. But even in the midst of that emotional turmoil, kind of run briefly through those kind of accepted stages of grief when you've lost a child.
I want to articulate Kubler-Ross is the individual that we coin of creating these stages of grief. And her research was actually for individuals who were losing their own life by a terminal illness. And so, quite frankly, I would not want to provide that psychobabble to an individual who's lost their child by homicide or suicide, because those stages don't apply to them. We would sit and be able to be in that space with that individual and just empathize and allow them to emote in any way, shape, or form that looks like. Is that person is sitting in the chair or wherever they choose to feel comfortable in a therapy office and just cry. There has been times where you have patients who've lost individuals unexpectedly or expectedly, and they spend session after session and they never talk. They just have that 1 hour space that they cry. They have that 1 hour space to be able to say, this is my space. And then when they leave the therapy, now they do have to answer the call, or they choose to answer the calls from the community who's looking to support them. They're looking to answer the calls from the community who actually are soliciting for their emotional health to be in in concert with theirs. Because Linda, I think you made a wonderful point regarding it's hard to grieve when people around you are unfamiliar, and the youth are many times unfamiliar with how to grieve because they are young, they haven't lost individuals, and when they have lost individuals, they've been too young to conceptualize what that really means. So when an individual loses a teen and that is their peer, this may be the first time in their life they're experiencing this sort of grief, and they're looking to join someone who's also in the same sort of pain they are in, which
Hold
then,
that point, Catherine, if you can, because and don't forget your point, because I need to take a quick break and we'll finish on the other side. So please stay with us. The Daily Drum will continue on Sirius XM channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. The original Quiet Storm with Raheem Devon is coming up next on WHUR-FM. We'll be back in just a few moments on Sirius XM channel 141. Welcome back to the Daily Drum on Sirius XM channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. We continue our conversation about grief when parents lose a child. My guests are Dr. Catherine Marshall-Woods, clinical psychologist specializing in grief therapy, Linda Diaz, mother of Lauren Santiago. She lost Lauren to suicide when she was just 15 years old. And she's also the founder of Lorenz Law in the state of Maryland, as well as Sheila Malloy Hall. She lost her son, Cortez, when he was just 41 years old. Before the break, Catherine, you were talking about how parents can best address grief in the immediate aftermath of their children. Please continue.
yes, I was just noting that Linda actually articulated that one of the challenging aspects is not having time or space to grieve because of the demands of other individuals who are looking to share in the grief experience with you, which requires a lot of ego strength. You are lending yourself to other people while you're also devastated and heartbroken, as Sheila said. And so, one of the things that therapy offers, or having that respite of, I know I have once a week, I know I have twice a week where it's just for me. It's just for me to cry. It's just for me to stay in silence. It's just for me to process. And some of that is silent, and some of that is with someone else. It actually can be a remarkable experience for an individual, the survivor, is to be able to grieve with someone who did not know their child, because now they're not worried about this individual and having to take care of them. Rather, this individual is 100% in this space for you. And so one of the things that I would say is the best part is get therapy as soon as possible, get counseling as soon as possible, have that person that you can just put all your emotions into regarding what you are experiencing at that time, because there is no rhyme, reason, pattern, stages of losing your child that we know of thus yet. Know that you're all over the place. You're numb. You don't feel. You do feel. You're overwhelmed with feeling. You're saddened. You're pained. You're heartbroken. Sometimes you're laughing, and you're laughing at a memory, but then you feel bad about laughing at that memory, so you feel guilty. It is very confusing, but that's why
Absolutely.
it's very helpful with a person who can be supportive to you, commit to your support, commit to your healing.
Linda, briefly explain to me, if you can, how did Loren's death change you?
Well, I will say this. My greatest fear with my two daughters was that I would not see them grow up. So I feared dying and leaving my children. And then when I lost Loren, I was so devastated that I never even dreamed in my entire life that I would lose one of my kids, especially at a young age. So what it did to me was, and it was kind of, grief is different for every person, every family. My oldest daughter is still very angry at the loss of her sister. And while I want to walk with Loren's love, and I want to speak about Loren, and I want to share memories about Loren, especially with my oldest daughter, it hurts my oldest daughter to think about her sister, who never wanted to be without her sister. And so how we were affected is going to be different from others. So I had to learn to cherish Loren a lot by myself, because when she left, all of the friends that I was able to help, they've gone. They're living their lives, and that, which is great, because they're here and they're living their lives. But they no longer, reach out or, talk to me about Loren. And others who knew Loren that I considered friends were not really there for me anymore, because they didn't want to be around me, because they didn't want to remember Loren. So to me, it didn't matter. I was still going to live, and I was going to live every day with Loren's love. And even though I lost her to suicide, I make sure every single day that she knows that I love her and that I think about her. And I live every day with her love guiding me. But I'm sure Dr. Woods would tell you, I'm a little unique in that thought, especially losing a child. But I basically, especially because of suicide, because of the taboo, because of the stigma, because no one wants to talk about it, I pretty much lost all friends, and I was alienated. So the only thing that I learned to do with my grief was to live with Loren's love.
Yeah.
For the short 15 years that I had her, I lived with her love.
Sheila, the same question. How do you believe the loss of Cortez changed you as a person?
Linda, I want to say that everything that you're saying, I completely get it and understand it so well. And I even understand about suicide in my own personal experience, which we can talk about at some point. But losing Cortez has changed me in many ways. It actually depends on the day, but it has given me strength to live on. As I carry this broken heart around with me, I still have to press through and hold this broken heart of mine, because I have to walk with it. No one really understands what I'm going through. It takes another mother or parent who has lost a child to really understand it. Just a few years ago, I had a very good girlfriend whose son was murdered, and it was all on the news. And I saw it on the news. And she had called me 10 minutes after I saw it on the news, not knowing I just saw this on the news. And my heart broke for her. And I walked with her. But when Cortez passed, I knew exactly how she felt. He's changed me to a point that I'm going to love Cortez's spirit every day. I'm going to talk about him as much as I want to. I talk to Cortez every day. I feel Cortez. Cortez memories give me strength to go on. As much as I do my therapy once a week, which I love because that is a space just for me, as the doctor said, where my therapist holds that space and says, let's take a moment for you to just breathe and rest and let me know when you're ready to start. because I can't share certain things about Cortez or really talk about him the way I want with other people because they don't understand or they don't know what to say, in which I get that. But just like Linda, my daughter, our relationship right now is very tough. She's very angry at the loss of her only sibling. She doesn't want to talk to me about it. She doesn't really want to talk to anybody. She doesn't want people to initiate a conversation about her brother. She gets offended. And so I can't even mourn with my daughter because I have to give her her space to mourn her way because I'm mourning my way.
See, I'm understanding as I'm listening to this conversation about that common thread and siblings. And so, Catherine, as it relates to not just perhaps siblings, but other family members, the loss of a child obviously leaves a massive emotional hole. And with that happening, how can someone manage the anger of a sibling, or the loss of that child will change the dynamic in the outer orbit of family and even friends? How do you counsel that? What do you tell them?
You share with them that it's understandable why they're angry. And I want to articulate that's what we see, is that they're angry and that they're offended. They are in pain. They're hurting. And I'm trying to be very clear about that, because individuals, when they see someone who's angry, have a very different response to that person in comparison to if you know this person is in pain. And it takes a long time for people to be able to feel comfortable and to be able to express being hurt and in pain. That is a learned skill. Is that many times individuals are in pain and they respond by being angry, or they look outwardly angry or even aggressive. And it is a learned skill to be okay with being vulnerable with yourself enough to say, I am injured emotionally and I am experiencing pain, and that does not make me weak. I don't have to place on this aggressive shield of the world in order to identify that I'm in pain. And at the same time be able to recognize I'm hurt and I've been hurt by the world in this situation, and I am angry about it too. The idea of being angry suggests I'm not going to get hurt again. I'm going to try and protect myself again from everything in the world so that I won't get hurt again. And in our younger years, and based upon where people are in their maturity, that is a very reasonable idea. I've been this pained and I don't want to do that again. So I'm going to protect myself. So I'm going to be angry so I never get hurt like that again. But as we live our lives, we know that pain is a part of it, and loss, devastating loss, is also a part of it. It's when people begin to become vulnerable with themselves and realize it's not weakness to feel this pain. It is human to feel this pain. And it's okay to feel this sort of pain, because that's an indication of how much you love that person. And that's what we want to hopefully get to a place where people can celebrate, is they've had that opportunity to love in that sort of way. So if you love that kind of way and it's lost, you're going to feel that kind of pain as well. And that is okay.
So let me ask you this, because you said something that really struck me earlier. You said in the beginning stages, there are times when a grieving parent, when the only thing that they can do is cry. But there may come a time, and tell me, you're the expert here, but there may come a time when all of the initial severe grief is over and they enter into another stage. Is there also a possibility that whether it's anger or sorrow, that there may be a leveling out? We know that it will never really end. But is there a point where things will kind of level out, where the parent will be better able to cope with life as life goes on? And what might that look like?
The goal is hopefully it's when, and I think your two guests, Sheila as well as Linda, are articulating it beautifully, is that when they are able to harness the love that they've experienced and be able to hold it in their mind and in their hearts on a daily basis and use that love to comfort them and to motivate them. I mean, you have two guests on here who's doing the ultimate of with their grief, which is providing a service to the community in some way. This is what we would call the highest order of psychological functioning here, sublimation, to take someone's pain and to make something that's going to help another individual. And here you are with two guests today who are doing things based upon their grief in order to be able to assist others who have experienced such pain and loss. So it can level out where, and that is the goal, that it levels out, that not only do you return to your daily functioning, that you remember to eat now, that you can return to work, you can love again in other relationships, you can connect again with the people who love you, that you do something with it in order to get justice. That's where your motivation is, that you actually create a foundation, a nonprofit to be able to assist or to educate other individuals. That is ultimately the goal for us, is that our experiences are not just our experiences for ourselves, but become experiences to help other people around us.
I know we
Absolutely.
are going to lose you, Catherine, in a bit, but and of course, Linda and Sheila will stay on with us. But what final thoughts might you have to help people who are going through this? And I will say in full transparency that a friend of mine is part of the Thompson family, and I told her that we were going to have this conversation, and she said, in a text with me, she said, thank you so much, because we need it for the Thompson families out there and other families who have gone through this, and for other families who may unfortunately have this kind of thing happen. What is the best counseling advice that you can give them?
Start with you. Don't forget that you are a living organism and you need care right now. The loss is, again, overwhelming, and it will feel that way, and it will, because it is so overwhelming, it can cause you to forget to take care of yourself, like Linda indicated, to feed yourself, to use the restroom. All of those sensations can be numbed during this time. Make sure to take care of you, and that in itself is the beginning. Is making sure you are doing those daily functioning, making sure that you're getting support if that support is available to you in your friends, in your community, if not professionally. Making sure you have that time and space that you are dedicating to yourself to be able to grieve, to be able to understand how you want to hold the memory of your lost loved one for yourself, and what ultimately do you want to do with that later on. In the first parts of this, just being okay, knowing that grief does not make you weak, it is actually a part of the healing.
Yeah. Dr. Catherine Marshall Woods, thank you so much. Um, it's always good to see you, even under these difficult conversations. And I appreciate your time, and we certainly will continue to be in touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, and be well.
Thank you. Linda, prior to us having this conversation, when you and I were talking, you you said something that really kind of touched me. And again, you and I have known each other for a very, very long time as a result of the work that you have done in this space. But when we were talking about this, you said that there are a million triggers for you. So with that, with somebody who knows you, for the people who love you, who care about you, who have known you for longer than I have, longer, who knew Loren when she was little, a baby even, you know, how would you want someone to interact with you without feeling that they must walk on eggshells? You know, how do you, because if somebody cares about you, okay, and they want to say, hey, Linda, let's go to a comedy show, let's go to dinner, let's go to happy hour, you know, your last name is Diaz, but you still get invited to the cookout. you know, how do you want the people who love you to interact with you?
They can literally interact with me extremely normal.
Mm-hmm.
They're anyone who wants to reach out to me just to say hi, or just to say, how are you doing, or invite me to dinner, or a movie, or something like that. That's actually very, very simple. One of the most major triggers that I have that I don't do are baby showers.
And that's important to know, but please go ahead.
So if I am invited to a baby shower, I very nicely say, thank you so much, and I greatly appreciate the invitation. Unfortunately, since losing Loren, it is very difficult for me to attend a baby shower. That is, that is the way that I am able to, guide individuals in order for them to understand what will cause me pain, which will make everyone else around me uncomfortable, so I don't do it. But I can have a conversation with, with anyone at any time, when it comes to wanting to just say hi to me and reach out to me and, ask me how I'm doing. That's normal. That's okay. If I'm having a bad day, I'll say, you know what, I'm not having such a great day, and I call them Loren days. I'm having my Loren days, which just means that I've, been allowing myself to grieve and cry and miss her, which to me is a form of release. To others, a form of release could be therapy. That's one of my forms of release. And that's what I've had to do since I lost her. And the reason why I do that is because I don't want everyone around me to be uncomfortable. It's a very uncomfortable situation for individuals. And I try to normalize for them, what a everyday interaction can be. If I'm having a bad day, I don't answer my phone. I don't return a text. I don't leave the house. I don't make other people uncomfortable. So what I realize is when I'm having bad days, I take those for myself. So therefore, it leaves the ability for anyone to reach out to me and speak to me at any time about anything, invite me anywhere. And I will answer. If I answer, then I will have as normal a conversation as I can.
Yeah. I only have a few minutes left, and Sheila, I'd like for you to have the last word, but also in the context of the same question I asked Linda, because I think this conversation is not just for those who are grieving, but it is also important for those who love the people who are grieving.
Yeah.
Because you want to be able to support them, and that, like, before the loss of Loren, that's just Linda, the happy-go-lucky Linda with two kids, and and the big smile and what have you. But then afterwards, that's Linda who lost her daughter, and even though you lost your son Sheila later in his life, that what do you want to tell the people who love you and your friends about how they continue to address you and support you? How is that done?
Well, I'd like to first just make sure that people understand that although Cortez was 41, he still was my child. I didn't lose Cortez just at 41. I lost the 14-year-old Cortez, the 10, the toddler, the infant. I lost all that. So losing a child, no matter what age, is a terrible experience.
Yeah.
And I want people to know that, and the doctors sort of said it too, I'm hurting. I'm broken. I lost a child. I'm learning how to get up and walk again with this thing. It's major. It's heavy. Grief is messy. Grief is horrible. And it's on your shoulders. And so people can still speak to me and talk to me and all of that. And like Linda said, I'm very forthcoming. When I'm having a bad day, I will let people know. But on my vision board here, I developed these 5 strategies, and I did them in my early work with domestic violence, and I share and I put them to use for myself. And the strategies are: don't be afraid to ask for help. Practice self-care. Retreat when you need to. Practice mindfulness and meditation. Have a solid support group. Those are my 5 survival tips. And I retreat often. When I know that I need to sit with Cortez or I need to sit with Sheila, I do it. I don't text. I don't answer the phone. I don't do anything. And I have a spouse here at home. And he had to learn how to support me. He'd never lost a child, although he experienced grief. And that's the difference. People experience grief, and so have I, but I never lost a child. So it's a different kind of thing that we're dealing with. And I want people to know that call me, speak to me, talk to me, because what I'm going to do, and I hope that it helps someone else, I'm going to talk about this thing. I'm going to share this information. I'm going to be open and transparent because I want to help someone else with my story, because I understand how painful this is for any parent. Yeah. And I'm learning how to laugh again, to smile again. My house was the home when we did all the celebrations, the Christmas dinners, the Thanksgiving. This was the house. And Cortez was a big part of that. And I used to celebrate the holidays and decorate my house all out. I haven't done any of that since Cortez's passing. And my youngest granddaughter, his daughter, said to me very kindly and sweet, "Grandma, it's okay if you don't want to put up the tree, because I know you're sad because Daddy's not with us anymore." That's an 8-year-old.
Yeah.
That's comforting me.
I think I'm going to have to let that be the last word, but as they say, out of the mouths of babes, and that certainly is another way to continue with the healing. Linda Diaz, Sheila Malloy Hall, and of course, Dr. Catherine Marshall Woods, leaving the program just a little bit early. We thank you all so much. We're so sorry for your loss, but we support you in your healing. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
That is the Daily Drum for this Friday, September 12th. For News Director Renee Nash, I'm Harold Fisher.